In this video, I'll be giving my thoughts on the latest episode of The Mandalorian, Season 2, Episode 6, Chapter 14, The Tragedy. This is going to be a spoiler video discussion, so if you've not yet seen the episode, I would recommend not watching this video, because I'll be talking about the episode in detail as if you have watched it, so you have been warned. Now, the last episode, Chapter 13, The Jedi, was just so goddamn good. It was an amazing episode, universally praised for its live-action debut of Ahsoka Tano, giving us the origins of Baby Yoda, revealing that its real name is Grogu, giving us sort of his origin story, how he came to be, all that stuff. It was just an amazing overall episode. But once that episode was finished and sort of the whole Ahsoka Tano arc was done, it made people realize that, oh yeah, little old bald-headed Boba Fett, he's still out there from episode 1 of season 2. So now everyone was just waiting for the Boba Fett's return. Is he going to return? What's that episode going to be like? Well, he finally got it in this episode right here. Now, once the title popped up for this episode and said The Tragedy, it was all like, oh shit, some dark shit's probably going to go down in this episode. Some dark stuff has to go down if an episode is going to be called The Tragedy. So in this episode, the Mandalorian, on another part of his quest, brings little Grogu to sort of this Jedi temple area where he then encounters Boba Fett. Moff Gideon's goons come in, and it's a whole bunch of shooting and a whole bunch of fighting to get back to Grogu, who Moff Gideon is trying to go after. Now, it was a surprise, obviously, for Boba Fett to be in this episode, just because we didn't know Boba Fett was going to be in this episode. But the even bigger surprise, personally for me, was the return of Fennec, because we know Boba Fett was going to come in, but Fennec is that Asian character from Season 1. It was Chapter 5, I believe, that episode where the Mandalorian teams up with sort of that sidekick guy, and they sort of go on sort of a bounty quest. Yeah, that was the worst episode of Season 1, and she was in that episode. It was just like, well, I guess we're not going to see her again because she sort of explicitly died in that episode. So it was really sort of a huge surprise that they brought her back for season 2. But it's honestly, I guess it's not that surprising just because the actress that plays her, she's a prominent face among Disney. She's the original voice of Mulan. She was part of the main cast of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And I always thought that was sort of a cool character, Fennec, from season 1. I was surprised they killed her off so quickly. So I'm glad they brought her back for sort of as a recurring character for the season 2 right now and going on beyond season 2 probably. So yeah, that was cool seeing her, but obviously the main attraction was Boba Fett, obviously. And finally, it took only 40 years, but to me, they finally managed to make Boba Fett cool. Just because I was never all that impressed with Boba Fett. I never got the sort of huge impression that he made with people, just the fact that he really barely had any lines in Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. He really doesn't do anything that cool. He doesn't have really any cool action sequences. It's just like, well, all right, Boba Fett, I guess. But my God, the way they did him in this episode was amazing. Initially, you see him without the armor, and that's how we saw him in episode 1 of season 2. And it was just amazing to see this grizzled sort of Boba Fett character, to see him, the man behind the mask, and just him, how he's been. It's just amazing that this is the guy that was under the mask the whole time. It was really just kind of amazing just to see this new take on the character. But then once he put that armor on, when he started doing his fighting against Moff Gideon's goons, the stormtroopers, it was just pure magic once he put that armor back on. Just because you see him do his stuff at his best, use his armor, use his weapons, use that rocket launcher, use sort of that missile target thing, the way he shot both of those ships down, it was just pure magic. It was unbelievable to where like, okay, this is the Boba Fett that I've wanted to see, just people tell me how cool he is, just because it was truly amazing what they did with Boba Fett, how they used him. I don't think anyone sort of thought this is how Boba Fett would be portrayed in season 2. It was just amazing what they were able to do with the character in this episode, and great portrayal by the actor who does him. I just love the grizzled look they gave for Boba Fett in this episode. Now, while all this crazy shit is going on with the Mandalorian fighting Gideon stormtroopers, Gideon sends the Dark Troopers to go after Grogu, who's meditating on the top of this rock. And these Dark Troopers, they're sort of a mix between Iron Man, Darth Vader, and the Death Troopers that we saw in Rogue One, a Star Wars story. And they were honestly pretty cool. They were, intimidating for the most part. I like the black color. Like I said, they look kind of like the Darth Troopers, but they were sort of like a robot sort of armor suit like Iron Man. They were pretty cool the way they did them. And they take little Grogu, and that's essentially why this episode is called The Tragedy. Just because it's the first episode where the Mandalorian sort of loses and the bad guys sort of win in the end. So it ends up feeling like the darkest episode so far and really leaves us on a sort of, oh man, what the hell is going to happen next going forward. So yeah, it was sort of the darkest feeling episode that we've gotten so far because of that, and it earned its name, The Tragedy. Just because, like I said, if the episode's gonna be called The Tragedy, then you gotta have some tragic shit that goes on. Now, it's not like any character died or anything, but like I said, the fact that the Mandalorian lost, I think it earns the title The Tragedy right there. Essentially, why it's a tragedy is the fact that the Mandalorian had an opportunity to save Grogu, just because while Grogu was doing his sort of meditating Jedi stuff, the Mandalorian tells Grogu to stay there, and then he goes off to sort of fight the stormtroopers, not knowing that the moment he leaves, Grogu was just sort of done doing that whole sort of meditating Force stuff. So Mandalorian, he was just like 1 or 2 seconds late from actually being able to take Grogu with him and actually save him without just leaving him on top of that rock for the Dark Troopers to take him. But overall, this was an absolutely spectacular episode for its amazing portrayal of Boba Fett, the great action, and its dark ending that set up great things to come for the final 2 episodes. So this episode was an absolute 10 out of 10. It was better than the last episode, which I thought would be tough to top, and it's probably the best episode of The Mandalorian that they've done so far in season 2 and season 1. It was that great. Now, it's always great to see who directed the episode at the end, and this episode was directed by Robert Rodriguez. It's the guy behind the Spy Kids movies, the guy behind Machete, he's behind Sin City. So it's always cool to see who the director is, and obviously he's an established director in Hollywood. So yeah, he did a great job with this episode right here, and hopefully those final 2 episodes can deliver with things to come, now that we see that the Grogu was on Moff Gideon's ship, and to sort of go with that whole sort of trying to get the Force out of him or whatever they're trying to do. He's showing off his Darksaber and all that. So yeah, I can't wait for these next 2 episodes. It should be absolutely spectacular if they can keep up the momentum that's come with this episode and the episode before, The Jedi. This was also another episode that did wonders for further developing the relationship between the Mandalorian and Grogu, just because we see now that the Mandalorian really does cherish that little metal ball that Grogu was always playing with, and the fact that we saw that he was generally sad when he had to tell Grogu to stay there and he would be right back because he didn't know what would happen to him, and he hoped that he could protect him. And then it should be really interesting to see in these next few episodes the full-on team up between Mando and Boba Fett, who him and Fennec agreed to sort of help the Mandalorian after Boba Fett finally got his armor back. So I can't wait to see these two team up. And man, I just can't get enough of this version, this portrayal of Boba Fett right now. It's beyond what I could have imagined. It's just so goddamn good. This is the Boba Fett I wanted to see. So yeah, can't wait for these next 2 episodes. Should be fantastic. So that'll do it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. And as always, thank you for watching.